Hello everyone, and welcome back to Warships Blitz with Terry. Today we are getting back to the ship roles. I have done this for destroyers and for cruisers, but I haven't done this yet for battleships. And I'm probably not gonna for carriers, for reasons that you might understand if you've seen me play carriers. But battleships are interesting because, again, if we are having a very quick look, and we looked at the North Carolina just here, but if we have a very quick look at the classifications, the ship type in-game are mentioned at battleships. And it says they are floating steel fortresses equipped with massive main guns that give them unrivaled firepower. And it says it is the second easiest to play, which is untrue. Cruisers are definitely not easier to play than battleships. I don't know where they get these ideas from. But anyway, so battleships. There are a couple of things to consider. The grouping or the classification of battleships in the game is ranging very broadly and covering a multitude of roles that these ships are actually good to play. So just because you have something that has the battleship symbol on it doesn't mean that they all play the same. So what we're going to be looking at today is what I would like to call the ship of the line role. You are part of the main battle group. You have some armor, more armor than most of your teammates, but less armor than some others. You have very long range guns. So for example, the North Carolina, if we look at it, has a range of 14 kilometers, and that's before we've slapped the camo onto it. And I am totally not sure why this thing's got a secondary battery modification on it. This must have been a meme setup or something. But if we are putting the artillery plotting room in, which makes a lot more sense, then the North Carolina has a range of 14.56 kilometers. And if we are actually putting the correct elite bonus in, there we go. I think I've recorded that on my personal account, which is why the numbers were different. Then we have a range of over 15 kilometers. There we go. Now that looks better. Let's put the camo on as well, just since we're at it. And let's see how much of a range we get now. Now we have a range of 15.6 kilometers. So you have a very long range with your guns. You have a decent amount of armor. And almost more importantly, I would say, you have a decent amount of hit points. Because a North Carolina, even though it's not the greatest and most tankiest battleship out there, has almost 50,000 hit points, which is easily 2.5 times or 3 times that of a destroyer at the tier. So your role is, as ship of the line, is to get into a position where you can give fire support to your team, not to rush ahead and get yourself killed or torpedoed instantly. You're not there to take point. That's the role that destroyers are taking, and to a degree cruisers, which are your screening ships. You're not also supposed to be sitting at the map border, but your role is, as ship of the line, is to assist maintaining a position that includes capture circles. So yes, the capture circles that Sly has mentioned recently, these things are important. So you assist with holding positions, you assist with gunfire support, and almost equally importantly, you assist with your hit points. Your hit points are there to be spent. Your hit points are a resource. They are an asset. If you don't use your hit points, then you have not used this asset. What do I mean by that? Well, let's get into some details on how this works. These hit points that you've got here that's your pool. When you take damage, it gets reduced. You can use your heals to heal back up. On the other hand, a battleship is the second most valuable target in the game points-wise, only surpassed by a carrier. So you don't want to die, but at the same time, you also want to make sure that you use your hit points to tank damage for your team. Because if let's say you're sailing you're playing with a cruiser. The cruiser doesn't have as many hit points. The cruiser doesn't have as much armor. It's much more vulnerable to enemy large caliber fire. So if the enemy team can shoot at you and not sink you, that is the important caveat here. If they can make that happen, if you can make that happen, then you have used your asset of hit points by taking damage that your team is not taking, and especially your more vulnerable ships are not taking. That is part of your role as ship of the line. Positioning wise, like I said, yes, you can take capture circles, but you're not there to rush capture circles ahead with the rest of the team. You need to know what's in there, because if you run into a destroyer, you have problems. Because while your guns are extremely powerful, your guns are usually loaded with armor piercing, which tends to overpenetrate destroyers. Unless you are an Italian or a British battleship, this is what you generally have to work with. You do have high explosive shells, which are good, but your reload is too slow. So if you get jumped by an enemy destroyer, you generally have a bit of a problem. That is not to say that battleships can't defend themselves against destroyers. They totally can, but it's not their primary role. So if you rush ahead and just go blindly ahead into the enemy fire, then you will die and you will cost your team a lot of points. And equally importantly, you will not be using your hit point pool, because you will just, donk some torpedoes into your side and sink, and that is not a good thing. So, all that said, let's have a look at a battle, and I'll keep explaining a little bit more what this kind of generic role is for a battleship. Here we are, and yes, indeed, this was recorded on my personal account, which is why the setup wasn't correct initially. Here we are on the infamous center control in Golden Channel situation. The round thing is the capture circle. You want to hold the capture circle, because not holding the capture circle doesn't give you points, which is important, because points win games. We are up against Iowa, Lepanto, a Black Kansas, an Amagi, a Neptune, a Vittorio Cuniberti, and a Benson. Now, I am playing as ship of the line here. I am not expecting to rush into the capture circle, but it does help to be aware of where the torpedo threat is. There are 3 ships here that have torpedoes: the Benson, the Cuniberti, and the Neptune. So Neptune is a relatively dangerous ship, because the torpedoes can be single-fired, they are relatively long range, and she's got a lot of them. So we do need to be careful, we need to keep an eye out of these. On the other side, there are some seriously big guns as well. All right, let's go. The first thing you do want to do, though, is not sit around in the beginning of the in the back of the battle line necessarily. Now you can let your teammates do the tanking for you, but then again, like I said, you wouldn't be using your asset, which is your hit points. So we are going to sail forwards to that little island, because that little island has a convenient ledge next to it. And that ledge means that I can be inside the capture circle, I can be protected from the left side from torpedo threats, and the friendly team calls out capture the target area. Yes, I might be in a battleship, but I am fully expected to participate in capturing, because the more whoever has more ships in the capture circle gets the points income. And points matter. Now, they don't matter to the point that you want to suicide, but this island also allows me to retreat if I'm running low on hit points. So I'm just waiting for the destroyers to scout something, as we've got I think there are 2 Fletchers in the capture circle. And there is an enemy Iowa. We are still behind an island, so we can line them up and get some shots without actually being spotted. Nope, we are spotted because the Lepanto is doing the same thing on the enemy side. And I think those shots on the Iowa have missed. So now I'm slowing down, as you can see, because I don't want to keep rushing ahead, because there's a Neptune on my left and there are some really big guns over there. So I just want to poke forward and take a couple of pot shots at these guys. Also, the enemy team tends to pre-aim this corner quite often, so you definitely want to make sure that you're not getting shot at. And yes, as I said, there come the torpedoes. These were probably Neptune spreads, just generally going fishing. But that's why I'm sitting in this position. So in this position, I'm useful to my team. I can get shot at by the Kansas, which hurts, but I'm in a battleship. I can take that. much more than a friendly cruiser. And I can return some fire, and I can carefully jockey inside the capture circle in this position and get some shots out. I am shotted by other things as well, but right now we are holding the capture circle, and yes, I'm taking fire from the left. Not sure if that was Neptune or if that was the Iowa, but I can always use the island. Yeah, it's Neptune. I can use the island to disengage from, or to shield myself from the left side, and I'm drawing fire from the Kansas again as well. Now the Iowa is coming around there and is threatening our Lepanto, but once I leave the capture circle, as you can see, we are starting to, well, not necessarily hold the capture circle anymore. So I don't want to get out too far. I just wanted to give some flanking support into the Iowa, but here comes the Neptune. Neptune, very dangerous, lots of torpedoes and smoke screens. But he just used his smoke screen, so he's not going to have a lot of smoke screen going forward. The Neptune is also very dangerous for our destroyers. So it's important that I pick my target correctly and see what I can shoot at, what I can support. You want to target things that are important to be targeted, like the Neptune if I can get shots, but I can also fire at the Kansas, given that I don't have shots at the Neptune, just have to dodge his inevitable torpedoes. But once he runs out of smoke, then I will be available. So I can take fire from the Kansas, which is shot off one of my gun turrets, which were annoying. There is that Neptune, so it would have been really nice to have 3 gun turrets available at this point, but we'll make do with what we have. And make sure that the Neptune isn't shooting at our destroyer, which is, again, an important part of being a battleship. Take the fire. Tanking is almost as important as dishing out damage. Now, he does have torpedoes on the other side, and there comes the Black Kansas, and he's still shooting at me. I can only get 1 forward turret on target. The Lepanto is shooting at me. So I'm now drawing fire from 3 enemy ships. And we're still holding the capture circle, however. But there is no enemy ship in the capture circle. So there's not really a need for me to be taking all this fire, especially that we got in a flanking Neptune. Okay, never mind. The destroyers appear to be in the capture circle. So while I'm getting some shots out at the flanking Neptune, who is about to eat a whole bunch of torpedoes, I may be needed back inside the capture circle just to make sure that we maintain control of it. Neptune smokes up, so we can get a blind shot in. There come some torpedoes from the front, and again I am being shot at by battleships. Fortunately, he has covered his turn in the smoke, so unless he comes around, I'm not going to have angles at him because I'm still tanking for the Kansas. Now at this point, I am running a bit low on hit points. I'm down to 10,000 hit points. I've got my last heal coming off cooldown, but at this point I've done my part. So I'm healing up. This is the last heal I'm ever going to get. But now it's the turn of the rest of the team to start tanking, because you do want to preserve your hit points if you can. So that Neptune comes around, which I'm not sure why he wants to commit suicide by battleship, but I'm more than happy to oblige him with that. And he is now very dead. And I don't think he could get torpedoes away across that ledge there. So now I'm down to 13,000 hit points, but we are holding the capture circle, and that is an almost full health Atlantico. Now Atlantico, being an almost indestructible tank, is very, very well suited to towards that kind of role. So I don't have to be in here anymore. At this point, I'm going to preserve my hit points and use my range to do a little bit more. There come also some torpedoes against my previous position, and the Kansas is still shooting at me. So I'm just going to open up the range. And I'm just going to sail away, because we are holding the capture circle. There's no need for me to be in there anymore. I don't have heals anymore. I'm low on hit points. I can still give some ranged fire support if necessary. But there's also a destroyer left, and we haven't seen anything of that thing in a while. So I'm not sure where he's lurking. But I'm going to just play at maximum range here and just lend a bit of fire support. The Kansas is still trying to kill me, because I'm a low health battleship, and battleships are worth a lot of points. But at this range, he is struggling with accuracy. So let's just keep. I can keep opening up the range even more, because I've got 15 kilometers of range. And while he's been shooting at me, he hasn't been shooting at my teammates. And within a minute or so, has lost almost all his hit points. Oh, hello! There's a destroyer. Because there are torpedoes in the water. Yep, there he is. It's the Cuniberti. So I've switched over to the high explosive, because I'm at close range engagement in a destroyer, and he might actually end up killing me, but the amount of points that we have should be sufficient. in that regard. So if he comes out, I can still sink a good salvo into him. Let's see if we can get him killed. We've got all the main batteries, almost all the main battery guns on target, but it's not just enough to kill him. So he does take me down, but at that point, because we have been holding the capture circle, the battle is over. So to reiterate, and obviously the Atlantico has taken the MVP because it's just what Atlanticos do, but to reiterate, ignore that. That thing doesn't count. Your role as a ship of the line is twofold. You're there to control, to maintain control of areas, to draw fire, and to dish out fire. So the two resources that you have at your disposal are your hit point pool and your very large caliber guns that can be used against targets like cruisers and other battleships to start to dealing damage. But I would almost argue that for the ship of the line role, the hit point pool is almost more important. And that in that you just draw. I mean, you've seen the amount of fire I've been drawing during this battle. And if it wasn't for that Kuniberti at the end, I would have survived and maintained our score. So that's kind of one thing that you really want to do. Take fire when you can and disengage when you can't, and try to position yourself such that you can do this. Right? Use islands, use island cover, use your range in order to open up if you're getting focused too much, and that is, and generally just hold the line. That is what you do in this role. Most battleships can play this role, which is why I haven't even gone through the tech tree, because you can play this role in almost any battleship. Not all are perfectly suited for it, but this is a very, very basic battleship role that you can play in almost any ship, and in almost any battleship, except for some of the battle cruisers like the German battle cruiser line. But everything else can totally play ship of the line. So that's it for me today. Thanks, everybody. And next time we will be looking at slightly different battleship roles. Bye-bye.